Hello and welcome to the Selfish podcast. Today we have Ashlee Hoelck and she's going to share her life and her journey. And she's a motivational coach and a woman of multi-talents. And I'm really excited to hear more about her and get to know her. So hi, Ashlee. Can you just share where in the world you are and what time of day is it for you?
Hi, yes. Thank you for having me. So I am in Central Texas in the United States, and it is 11:30 here right now.
Nice. Yeah, I'm in Spain and it's what time is it? It's 5:30 in the afternoon. And I just love at this time and this age that we can connect in an instant around the world. When I was a child, it was like fascinating to think of the idea of a pen pal. I never had one. But now
Right.
to just connect to people all around the world in an instant is beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. And we just moved to Texas from San Diego, California, back in fall of 2020. And, moving away from everyone, it was a little bit scary. But the crazy thing is that I connect with so many people online that I've never felt lonely, in that move because
Yeah.
I have everyone available, at my computer on my phone.
Yeah, no, it's I live a very remote lifestyle and I'm pretty much sort of like what someone would say is off grid most of the time. So I don't interact with a lot of people unless I go to the shops, but online I can have a vast network of friends and people to connect with in an instant, which is amazing.
Yes.
So I really like to know people's lives and their journey, and I like to get to the beginning of your life. So I really want to hear about your childhood. Can you paint me a picture of what life was like, say, pre 10 years old?
Yeah, definitely. So my parents had me when they were pretty young. They were about 19 and 20. And, they worked really hard, both of them, and sent me to a private Catholic school where I went for until I think sophomore year. Yeah, sophomore year. It's where I transferred out. It was kind of, if I'm being honest, it was kind of a lonely childhood. I was an only child. My sister was born when I was 12, but the first 12 years, I didn't have a sibling, and
Hmm.
um, I wasn't really popular, I guess you would say, at school. So there was a lot of uh, bullying, not like physical bullying, but just a lot of, emotional bullying, which when you're a little girl is just as bad. So it's kind of lonely growing up. I did have some fun summers at Girl Scout camps and like YMCA camps, all sorts of stuff like that. Um, but
Nice.
yeah,
And
and
what did your
then
parents do?
so my mom was working in like admin. I'm not even sure exactly what she did, but she was like in administration. And then when my sister was born at when I was 12, she became a stay-at-home mom and stayed home with my sister. And my dad was a computer engineer. So when I was first born, he was still going to school. He went to UCSD, which is a really nice school in California, and started getting really good jobs as an engineer and worked at Intuit.
Oh, nice. And no, you
Yeah.
mentioned school had you got bullied and that, but how did you find the sort of the rest of school? How did you find education and how was your school life?
So I was not the best student. I definitely was like an A B student, mostly B's, and then, with C's thrown in there. But the C's were basically F's, like getting a
Yeah.
C at school was still not really good. And, there's so much pressure to make straight A's and get into a good high school because when you go to Catholic school, you basically went to either the all girl high school or the all boy high school, or you went to the co-ed Catholic school. And, they had really high standards. You had to be a well-rounded student. So there's a lot of pressure. And, I tried really hard. I'm not sure why exactly. I, was still kind of like a B average student. And, that's totally acceptable now. But back then it was, the disappointment of not getting those straight A's. And it probably had a lot to do with the social aspect of school, how, I was a little bit traumatized and it was probably hard for me to study when, I was probably had a little bit of anxiety and depression.
Yeah. Do you remember the first thing you wanted to like do or be when you was older at that age, like your first ambition?
I wanted to be a ballerina.
Nice.
I think like part of me was like, I need to be a doctor or lawyer. And, I never really actually wanted to be a doctor or lawyer. I just felt like this pressure to like that's what you had to do if you wanted to be successful, was be a doctor or a lawyer. But I always I wanted to dance. I wanted to help others. So I thought about, being a like psychiatrist or psychologist and
Oh,
yeah.
nice. Yeah. So your ambition from an early age was to, they said, to help others. And do you have any? Did you do any dance? Did you get into ballet, or it was just a dream?
Yes, I did do ballet. I was in classes, and even in high school, I did ballet. And I was trying to get my parents to send me to like a ballet camp
Yeah.
over the summer, where it's like you do ballet 4 to 7 hours a day. It's really intense, and they didn't send me. It was really expensive, as dance usually is, which is probably for the best because even when I was doing ballet just a few times a week, it was very intense. The culture is not very good for young women. There's a lot of pressure to be perfect, to be very small and skinny, and it's kind of unhealthy and toxic. But I did have a lot of fun dancing. It was really nice to just kind of get lost in it, and it was kind of
Mm.
a relief from you know the social aspect of life.
Yeah, I think it's important when we're young to get any form of movement that we can, whether it's a sport or dance, but to get our body just flowing and moving. And I know, like
Mhm.
ballet, like you said, it's got a stigma attached to it of extreme strictness, especially
Yeah.
if someone's they're trying to push you to actually be a professional in that area.
Yes, yeah. And I did do sports, just to do the sports because I wanted to, be active and hang out with my friends. So I always played every single sport. I was just not very good at all of them. I never wanted to get hurt. There was an incident where one of our classmates, she hurt her knee. She tore something in her knee when we were like 8 or 9, and like the ambulance had to come, and it was pretty traumatizing. And I was like, that I don't want that to happen to me. So I never pushed myself really hard in sports because I was like, no, I'm good. I don't want to get injured.
Yeah,
So ballet was
participate
nice
but not
because there was
pull
not a
out.
lot of injuries in ballet.
Nice. Yeah. And it may be the bullying, but what comes to mind first when I say what was your earliest struggle in life?
Um, I think it was that, definitely, like trying to find my place and always just wearing a mask and trying to people please and make other people happy or make other people like me, and kind of not acting like myself, like my true authentic self. So I think that was definitely the struggle, was just trying to find my place in the
Yeah.
world as myself.
Yeah. And was this something you shared with anyone? Did you tell your parents about this or you just kept it to yourself?
I pretty much kept it to myself. I've told my mom some things recently, like, they made fun of me for having really bushy eyebrows. I'm half Mexican, so naturally a little more dark, hairy.
Mm.
And my mom wouldn't let me get my eyebrows waxed, even when the other girls were doing it in like sixth grade. And I didn't tell her that they were making fun of me at the time. And, I told her because my sister's 12 years younger, and she let my sister do it really young. And I was like, Mom, I was getting made fun of because of my eyebrows. And you kept saying, no, you don't need to do it. So I've told her now, but I think when you're little, you don't want to, I didn't want them to feel pain or sadness for me. And, I was scared to tell them, I guess.
Yeah, and I can relate with that, with not wanting to share things. When I was going through issues when I was a child, I didn't want to share them with my dad because my parents were separated, and every time I got to see my dad, it was always the opposite, and it was really nice. So I hid
Yeah.
everything that was bad, because I didn't want to hurt him. And I think it's incredible how intuitive a child is to want to protect their parents because they're
Mhm.
looked at as the vulnerable ones, but they're quite. They said we seem to have a very strong nature from a very young age to actually love and care for our parents in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what did you find? I know you said ballet came in and that helped a little bit. Did you have anything back then that did help you, say, cope or get through the day with the pressure you was feeling?
Um, Not for a long time. I think I did a lot of the negative coping mechanisms, in high school, started drinking and smoking and kind of dealing with it that way. Um, I think once I was, you know, I ended up in an abusive relationship too from 16 to about 19. And when I was about 21 is when I think I started finally taking care of myself and, doing positive things for myself and uh, changing my mindset and really starting to do that personal development and eating healthy, exercising, things like that. But when I was a teenager, it was kind of just a whirlwind of negative coping mechanisms and struggling.
Yeah, so you said you got into a sort of toxic and abusive relationship from 16 to 19. And I've spoke to a few people that have had that issue and in different parts of their life, and they look back and they're like, all the signs were there at the beginning. It's just they was unaware of the signs. Was there signs that you see now in that relationship that someone could sort of look out for?
Okay, yeah, definitely. So when I met this person, I was already going through some trauma. I had been, sexually raped by a friend in our group, and I was struggling with that. I had a lot of depression about it. And when he met me, he kind of could tell that something was wrong, and he, hung out with me a little bit and then got me to tell him. And so he kind of preyed on that. Like he saw that I was weak and suffering, and he fed me, those false lies like, "Oh, I'll protect you. I'm never going to hurt you. I'll never let anything happen to you again." And I'm a 16-year-old girl, and I'm like, okay, someone's going to help me and save me and protect me and stuff. And so that was the first sign, I guess. And then the other signs were just like the little pieces of control, um, telling me like bad things about my friends, like, oh, they're not really a good influence on you, or just talking trash about my friends and trying to get me to see that I shouldn't hang out with them. Um, Telling me how he liked things, like saying, I really like your hair when it's straightened, and kind of just telling me these little pieces of how he liked my hair's obviously I'm Mexican, it's naturally very curly and wild. And
Mm.
so he would tell me, I like your hair straightened. And so it was a lot of like emotional abuse as well, just trying to get me to confine to like his standards. And I felt that if I didn't do those things, that he wouldn't like me, or he would like someone else more. Um, and so it's definitely those little pieces of controlling. And it started to expand further and further, where he didn't want me to see my friends. I went to SDSU my first year of college, and that's when the physical abuse actually started. Was when I moved out of my parents' house, and we were together a lot more, and I wasn't always grounded.
Mm.
um, but he wouldn't let me go to class, and it wasn't like holding me down, like you can't go out, but it was more of like the manipulative. Like if you go, I'm going to be really upset with you, and there's already that threat of, is it going to get physical? So it started with the little pieces of control, and then it kind
Yeah,
of expanded and expanded.
yeah, and that from what I've heard from other people's stories on similar things, is that seems to be the way it seems to happen almost every time. Is there's like little elements of control and slowly isolating that person away from
Hmm.
basically their support structure and people that would tell them otherwise, and they slowly isolate them, take them from friends, then take them from family, and then guilt them emotionally. And like you said, with always a hint of a physical abuse.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then normally that manifests as well as it keeps going. So I'm so happy to hear you got out of it and you can speak about it. It's beautiful you can actually share, because for so many, when they've been through them sort of things, even uttering the words is extremely difficult.
Yes. Yeah. It took a while. I'm like 32 right now. So I did keep a lot of it a secret. That was another thing that I didn't tell my parents, because I just didn't want it to hurt them, and I didn't want them to feel sad for me.
Mm.
So I did like keep it from my parents, and there was a lot of shame around it, because I ended up flunking out of SDSU because I wasn't able to go to my classes, and I was, in such a traumatic relationship that it, I didn't even care at that point.
Yeah.
And so they kind of don't even know why I flunked out. They just think it was because I just didn't do well. But I still couldn't really bring myself to tell them. So
Yeah. How did you get out of the relationship?
So the so there's like two pieces to that. So the abuse stopped because of one incident. There was one time when he, was beating on me, and I was like on my back on the bed, and he was like on top of me or standing up over me, and I describe it as I saw red and I kind of like blacked out. Um, and I guess my subconscious kicked in and started fighting back. And I was still doing ballet at the time, so I had very strong legs. And I just started kicking out, like to get him off and get away from me. And I was freaking out. I think I was like screaming, and he kind of saw that I was no longer there, that I was totally freaking out, and he put his hands up to stop me and say, stop, stop, stop. And while his hands were extended out, I kicked his hands, and he started screaming, and I snapped out of it. And he went to the hospital, and I had shattered two bones in his wrist from kicking him.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of the incident that stopped. He never touched me again. And, I'm very proud of that piece of me that actually finally stood up, because it was getting to the point that if I didn't get out, I was going to end up extremely injured or dead, because it was getting progressively worse. It'd been about 10 months of weekly beatings, and they were getting worse and worse. I was having bigger bruises. I was being put unconscious, things like that. So I'm very proud of myself for standing up and for fighting back and ending that. But I was still very, emotionally attached. I was in love, and I had been, manipulated for 3.5 years at this point. And it took a while to sever that emotional bond, that toxic emotional bond that we had. I would say about another year and a half. Um, it was kind of very a messy, blurred ending. We were seeing other people, things like that, and he would pop into my life every once in a while. One time he found out where I was working. I was cocktail waitressing at, a bar in one of the beach towns, and he found out where I was working, and then he started kind of coming around. Um, Against my wishes. I told him not to, because I was done with it, and
Yeah.
so yeah, so it was kind of a blurred, messy ending. And then finally I just realized I'm worth so much more, and totally cut off contact and blocked him on every social media part. And yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so nice to hear the story. As horrible as the story is, it's interesting to me. It's fascinating, and also one of resilience and strength to persevere through them sort of things. And I think it's inspiring for others to hear. But I also I've my partner Danielle, my love. She was in a very long term, really extremely abusive relationship as well, and we've had lots of in depth conversations about it, and really helped open my eyes up and my sight to. I used to see when someone's in that relationship, and then you're sort of like, yeah, but why don't you just get out? And especially when people go back after a certain amount of time, because it's really hard to comprehend when you've never been in that situation that someone would keep going back to someone that's extremely abusive, but they don't, like you said, the emotional bond that's there. And for her, when we was talking, a big part of it was like there was always a little glimmer of hope that maybe he would change, maybe she could be the one to change him or fix him, or this won't be permanent. Was that something like you can relate to?
Um, yes, I thought that he could change, but I think a big piece of it is that by the time it got to the physical abuse, there had been so much manipulation, and he totally took away my self-worth. He completely degraded me. He made me completely lose myself. When he was done with me, I was just like a ghost of the person that I was. So I think that's a big part of people who are abusive, is that they know how to break a person down and make them so reliant on them, and make them question everything about themselves. So he weakened me, he completely weakened me and took away my support system, took away my friends and my family, took away my self worth, so that all I knew was him, and you know, I didn't feel strong enough anymore. And I would say that I was a strong person before, but um after just years of being completely degraded, you know, there was like every little thing. Like he would tell me that I needed to lose weight. I was, you know, I was 115 pounds and I'm 5'4". So I was perfectly fine when I was 17. I
Mm,
was a great weight. But he told me this so many times that in like 1 year, you know, freshman year, you're supposed to gain the freshman 15. I actually lost 15 pounds and I weighed just under 100 pounds at 5'4", because he just kept telling me that I would look better if I lost weight, you know? So it was just all these little things that um, he manipulated me to and belittled me about everything, you know. And it took a long time to rebuild myself after that. You know, I wasn't allowed to leave the house if I wasn't wearing, like, if I wasn't properly dressed, if my hair wasn't straightened and my makeup wasn't done. And like that took me a long time to be able to leave the house in like sweats, even if I was just going to, you know, the store down the street, you know, that took me a long time to get over. And even when I met my now husband, like 7 years later, it was when we were in a relationship when I did it for the first time. So
yeah.
it took a long time to get over those triggers.
Yeah, and that's what I actually was really curious about next. And you sort of told me the time frame there, 7 years later. Because when I met my love Danielle, she was a few years out of the relationship, but she was in a position where the guy had just destroyed her image of the males in complete. Like she'd talk to him, be friends with him, but she had no instinct in wanting to be in a relationship. And we became friends first, um, but she was in a place where like he had just tarnished that, and she'd just been getting her worth back, getting into exercise, and just really taking care of herself. Um, so how was your image of sort of males afterwards, and how did it work to get how did it feel to get back into a relationship?
Oh, yes. So I can relate to your love. I swore off dating. I swore off love. You know, at 21, I declared I was never going to get married, that I was never going to have children. I never wanted to get in a relationship again because of the damage that had been done. And I hadn't been in a lot of relationships. I had been in like three under 6 month relationships in high school, before this one started at 16. So at 20, 21, I decided never again. Um, and so, yeah, that was kind of my thought process for a long time. I did I met someone when I think I was like 24. And, you know, I told him, nope, I'm not getting married. I don't want children and I don't even want a boyfriend. And, you know, he just kept telling me how much he liked me and that he was falling in love with me and he really wanted to be with me and blah, 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 going on and on. And I kept telling him for, you know, months, like 2 or 3 months. Like I would get in these like small relationships, but I would never put a title on it. I would never make it official. And then I would usually do something to, like, I would ghost them or do something to mess it up or just tell them I was done or whatever. And so finally this guy convinced me and I was like, okay, fine, we can date. And so we did for like a few more months, and then the relationship ended. He was not being as nice as he was, and I was like, you know what, I don't want to deal with this. I didn't even want to be in this relationship, and
Mm,
I ended it. And and then we ended up reconnecting. My father got diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer, and he passed within 6 months. And I invited this ex boyfriend to the funeral because he had met my parents, and my parents hadn't met anyone I dated in a long time because that didn't exist.
yeah.
And so I invited him, and he came, and he was very sweet, and we kind of rekindled and started talking again. And then one night we were out, I think because we were like 23. We were out in at a bar and drinking, which was friend's house, and he got really angry about something really silly. And he shoved me up against a fridge really hard. And you know, I like kept my composure that night because we'd been drinking and I couldn't drive back to my house. The next morning I went home. I cried hysterically in the shower. I think I even took like a little piece of Xanax that someone had given me after my dad died, to kind of help with the anxiety, but I hadn't taken it before. And I was like so stressed out. I took a little piece of the Xanax, and then the next day I told him, I was like, "Look, I'm done. I'm not doing this again. I'm not going down that road." Um, so I ended it there. But my dad dying and watching my mom take care of him, in those last 6 months, really kind of just made me start breaking down my walls, because I saw my mom caring for him. And I thought, what if something happens to me? He got stomach cancer, and he was a healthy guy, and it just came on really suddenly. He was only 44. And I was like, what if it's, genetic? What if I have stomach cancer in 20 years and I'm still not married because I swore off love and there's no one there to take care of me? And kind of opened me up to the possibility of like, okay, maybe I can, find a healthy relationship. And so I put down those walls. And 6 months later, very randomly, I was with my roommate, and we met some of her friends at a bar after being somewhere else. And I met my now husband. So it was like
Nice.
6 months after I put down my walls, I met my husband. And then 6 months later, we were pregnant with our first kiddo. Got married a few years later, and now we'll be, I think it's 8 years, 8 or 9 years together in October.
Oh, nice. Congratulations. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
so nice that you opened your walls and so quickly everything changed. And
Yeah.
you said,
Yeah.
have you got one child or
We have two now. So we have a,
two?
a 6-year-old and a 2.5-year-old.
I was just curious because you said you was an only child for so long. I thought, I wonder whether you would want to have made sure your other one had another child to grow up with or not. Was that a motivation for you?
Yes. So what's funny is my husband, he's one of five. So he's got an older brother and then three younger sisters. They're all 2 years apart. So, lot of children in their house. And then me, obviously, I had my one sister. And so after we had our first kid, and we're talking about the second one, because I went from when he met me, I was still saying I'm not getting married and I'm not having kids. And so obviously that changed pretty quickly. And then I started saying, "Oh, I want 5 kids. I want 5 kids." And he was like, "No, no, let's just have two. Let's have two." Because he kind of grew up in a crazy house, with having all these siblings and stuff. And then I grew up kind of lonely, and so we both wanted the opposite. And then when we had our second child, at about 6 months, I could tell that he was very wild. I could tell that he was going to be our wild, crazy child. And my husband's the second born as well, and he was very wild and out there. And so, like, talking with his mother-in-law or with my mother-in-law, she's like, "Oh yeah, he's just like Drew. He's just like him." So I decided that two was good. I'm the one who's home with them most of the time, and my husband works, so I'm always outnumbered. So I was like, two is good. If we have more, I'm going to be even more outnumbered. And so now we've decided on two.
So for now, it's two.
Yes. Well, that we're done. We're definitely done.
Yeah. And how does that feel now? Like having children and being married, and like compared to thinking that would never happen. Like how does that feel for you?
Oh, it feels so right. It's it took a while to get here, but I've been healing and changing so much. And first becoming a mom, it's such a transition, because I was 25 and I got pregnant. And I'd had a really epic 25th birthday. We had done so many like wild activities, gone to concerts and pool parties and all this stuff. And so I was still very much, and I was bartending and serving in bars and stuff. So I'm still very much living that wild lifestyle, I guess.
Mm.
So transitioning to having a baby was kind of difficult, and lost some friends in the process. None of my friends had kids at the time, so it was kind of just like a very hard transition. And for a couple years I kind of just lost myself in being a mom, and that was all I really did, was try to be the best mom that I could. And I kind of lost a part of my identity again, and like my passions kind of became just being a mom, or what best can I do for my kid? Like, what activities are we going to do today? Things like that. So the last couple of years, it's been more of a journey of finding myself again and just really getting connected to what I want and how I want to make an impact on the world.
Oh, nice. And going back to just before you had kids, and like from that age of when you came out of the other relationship, like you said, you dated once, and then not too long after, when you was 24, 25, you met your now husband. What what techniques or what things did you find in that time to rebuild that worth and value of yourself up to that point?
So the first thing that I did, because when I was, I obviously had really bad PTSD and depression and anxiety. I did try going to a therapist, but I went to a man and I felt like he wasn't really listening to me. And just coming out of that relationship, and talking to a man didn't feel right to me either. And he kind of just immediately prescribed some, I think he gave me an antidepressant, an antipsychotic, and like a sleeping pill. So he just prescribed me all these medicines, and they ended up making me feel a lot more depressed and suicidal. And so I think I only did them for like a month, and then I quit cold turkey, had those brain zaps that people talk about. Um, and the first step into like my healing was one day when I was just, I was crying in my bed. I was singing Adele really loudly because I was just, weeping. And I just decided, I made a decision to start smiling more. I said, you know what? Maybe if I start smiling, it'll make me feel happy. Other people will think I'm happy instead of like this depressed, abused person. And so that was the first step, was I started smiling more. And, I've studied a little bit of NLP, and it's actually called biofeedback when you do things like that to like trick your mind into believing something other than you're feeling. So I started smiling more, and I actually cut out watching the news. This was, back before the news was all over Facebook, but I stopped watching it online. I stopped reading articles online and watching it on the TV, because I was so like sensitive at the time, that hearing all the bad news, because the news is only bad news, right?
Yeah.
And hearing all of that was just it was so heavy for me. I felt every single story. I felt everyone's pain. And so I cut out the news and started focusing on just like positive things, and, the power of positive thinking. So that was what helped me in the beginning, the first 5 years, focusing on eating healthier. I wasn't eating very healthy, at that time, eating a lot of fast food with my friends, and wasn't really exercising. So I just started going to the gym, eating healthier, and feeling good on the inside. And then a few years ago is when I started healing even more. Um, Started reading a lot of personal development books. I started a gratitude practice. Started waking up before the kids and focusing on myself, meditating, yoga, those sorts of things.
Oh, nice. It's nice to hear. And there's so many people that I speak to. Some have had, like everyone I see, their sort of traumas that they had, each to their own. Like there's no sort of measurement of who's had it worse or better. It's just like whatever someone's biggest trauma is for them is their biggest trauma. But the paths to change in that seem to be vast. Like there's so many ways. And now with the ability we have of information, like it's easier to find, even people hearing what you just shared. And the smiling was a big part of my journey. And I had over like 20 years of depression, and I used to have chronic fatigue, insomnia, and my mum had severe schizophrenia my whole life, and I used to take care of her from a child. But that caused me to really question the world and life, and made me suicidal from a young age, and all sorts of issues it caused. Um, but that also implanted that I wasn't happy, so I never smiled, and I wouldn't be in a picture because I didn't want to see that reflection of myself. Because I was like, why, and not being authentic was always an issue for me. I always wanted to be my true self and be authentic. And when someone says like smile for the camera, I'll be like, no, I
Yeah.
can't do it. I was like, that's not real. That's you're trying to make me fake. And I really couldn't stand it. It made me so angry. Any chance I got, I'd run behind the camera and take the picture. And whereas now it's like I challenge myself all the time, like how long can I hold a smile for? Yeah, so I like go for my morning walk every morning. I do like a routine with like exercise similar to like yoga and tai chi and qigong, and I go for a walk and I just smile and I try and hold that smile for like a long time. And it's really hard to continuously smile. And it's really interesting the thoughts that can arise at the beginning process. And I've shared this with other people. Notice like a lot of people, they start to smile and the thought arises, what you got to smile about. And like the downplaying of it. And it's like there's all these imprints within us of all our experiences that are, trying to set the pattern that's already existed. But if you're trying to change that pattern, you need to change something. And like I said, just posture, smiling can do wonders. So yeah, anyone listening, like just smile more often. It does make a difference, especially
Yeah.
when you can smile at a person as well, and you see it change. Like I used to look the other way when people walk down the street or walk past me. I'd look
Oh,
downwards or not make eye contact. I didn't want the interaction. Whereas now, if someone's walking along and they're coming past me, I'll look in the eyes and give them a little smile or say hello or say good day. And like in an instant, their whole body posture changes. They smile back, and you see how powerful that actually is.
yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's funny because I smile all the time. I smile about everything. Like I even smile, if I'm angry, I smile. If I'm uncomfortable, my husband and me, when we went on our honeymoon to Belize, we went zip lining, and I am terrified of heights, very, very terrified. And I ended up having to go with the instructor. Like he had to go behind me because he gave me a set of instructions. We're like zip lining over a river, over the jungle. And I was like, you have to go with me because I have no idea what you're saying. And I'm freaking out. So we went across and I'm smiling, and the guy who's with my husband is like, "Oh, look, she's having a great time," because it took us forever to actually get on the line. And my husband told the guy, he's like, "Oh no, that's her. Smile." Like he's
Yeah.
like, "I know her, and that she is not having a good time. She is freaking out." And I was, and I actually ended up having a panic attack. Like when we landed, my fingers were stuck, my hands were stuck. I couldn't open my hands, and yeah, so I'm having a panic attack and smiling.
And smiling. Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
because it's a bit like, do you know when someone, like, I don't know if your parents did it, parents seem to do these things to children a lot for some reason, when they like tickle the belly or the sides of your ribs, like to the point you're crying, laughing, and the
Uh-huh.
child's begging you to stop because it's not pleasurable, but it looks like you're having so much fun.
Yeah.
Seems like you've got something like that going on. Like when you get so built up, a lot of lot of laughter and smiles comes out.
Yeah.
How do you think your younger self, say at like 15 years old, if they were to meet you now and who you are now and how you carry yourself, what do you think your younger self would think about you?
I think that they'd be very proud. They might think that some of the things that I do are a little strange. I do have a lot of little woo aspects to myself, so I think they wouldn't be able to understand. Um, but I think that she'd be very proud of how far that I've come, and that I turned, my adversity into something great, and I was able to find the strength in it and find the lesson and the growth, and to actually be grateful for it and be grateful for the path that it kind of paved for me.
Oh, nice answer. Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest sort of like a key, like a if you can take them events, like you said, them adversities or them traumas or whatever it is, it's really a battle. If you can not only just come to a place of acceptance and forgiveness, but make it useful because it's a unique experience that you've had. If you can then put that to use, I've seen in people and in myself that then becomes like fuel and unwires a lot of issues as well. Just to
Mhm.
be, because it's useful and then it's a tool that you've actually had from your own experience, from your own school of life. Yeah, and it's almost like graduating and then you're going out into the workplace with it. And that seems to be like what you're doing now. So can you
Mhm.
explain a little bit of what you actually are doing now with all that experience and how you're sort of being of influence and helping coach people and mentor them?
Yes, definitely. So hold on one second. So in the fall of 2020, so just about 18 months ago, um, I actually healed 12 years of chronic pain that I've had since I was 21. I've always had back pain since I was 21. I threw my back out twice, that in like 1 month. And, I would throw it out every 1 to 2 times a year. And doctors could never figure out why. They did x-rays. All they could tell me is that I had bulging discs. So I spent 12 years in pretty excruciating pain. It would come in waves, obviously, and no real answers as to why it was happening. And so last summer, or the summer of 2020, I started writing in like my little morning manifestation pages that I'm back pain free since 2020. And so I was just kind of putting that out there and trying to figure out why my back was hurting so bad. And so in the fall, I started hearing about how emotional trauma can be stored as physical pain. And when I first heard this, I kind of thought it was crazy. I thought there's no way that I I'm storing emotional pain in my body as physical pain, because this pain was really bad and really severe. But I was ready to find a way to heal it, and so I was open to the possibility. And I ended up in this manifestation course, but someone that I had met, online. And I thought I was just going to learn, how to be a better manifester and, call in my dreams. And what ended up happening was there was a lot of healing inside of it. There was, inner child meditations. There was forgiveness work and cord cutting meditations. So I went on this like 4 to 5 week healing journey. My husband was working nights at the time, so I had space after the kids went to sleep to do these meditations on the couch, to sob and cry hysterically and just really release everything. There was a lot of journaling, and I wrote, an angry letter to my abuser, kind of detailing all that he was making me feel and all of the things that still came up 12 years later. How it affected my relationship with my husband, all of these things. And in the letter, you find growth from it. So I would find like the lesson from it. And, the lesson was that it made me stronger. It made me kinder. It made my heart bigger. It made me love deeper. And doing the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer. And so I spent about 4 to 5 weeks doing all of these healing modalities. And I woke up and my back pain was gone. And it had been 12 years. So, yeah. And waking up to it being gone one morning was kind of unbelievable. And so for a little while, I kind of waited. I waited for it to come back. And, it didn't come back. And the work of my coaches, because I worked with a couple different coaches. One of them I just did some of her courses online, but working with these coaches and them healing me and transforming my life in such a big, impactful way where, nobody else had ever been able to help me. It was just so inspiring to me. So since then, I have been working on my own coaching certifications and healing more and learning more about the online world and the business world, and expanding further, because eventually I want to learn as much as I can about this phenomenon to me of this trauma being stored as physical pain. And so it just motivated me that that's what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to help people heal, and I want to help people transform their lives, just as these coaches helped me transform my life.
Oh, nice. And you did all that, like I said, and got all that motivation while being a full-time mother as well. And you said you were you're doing this at nighttime and at home. So it's inspirational to know, like, it wasn't because you went to a 5-week retreat and had everything catered to you and the perfect setup. It was done in your spare time that you could make for yourself.
Yes, yeah, it definitely was. And now I wake up in the morning before the kids too, and I'm able to focus on myself. But yeah, I squeezed it in. I was staying up later than I would usually, just because I wanted to get all of this work done, and it was important to me. And if something's important to you, you'll make the time for it.
Yeah, and I think a big part. Someone was asking me that question the other day, and they were saying like how much pressure it is to do something, and like how do you find that motivation and sort of to do it for yourself. And I said, to be honest, I said it just comes down to your worth and value. If you really believe you're worth it, you'll do it. I said, like a child, it comes down to like self-love and unconditional love. Like when you had your child and it's like 1 year old, you had no conditions on it, no expectations that, you didn't care if it poos itself or throws up on you. You just don't care. You don't judge it. You don't blame it. You just love it. And it's like when you've loved something that much, you want to do the best for it. And that requires sometimes some work and some effort and pushing. But that comes with a flow. Did you find that? Do you do any like self-love practices as well?
Yeah, so I've done some of those too. Like doing affirmations in the course. It was like one of the exercises was to do them in the mirror, looking at yourself in the eye until whatever you're saying, your affirmation, until it doesn't feel weird, until it feels normal and natural. And so in the morning, I kind of switch up my morning routines just on how I'm feeling. But some mornings I'll write my 5 pieces of gratitude, and then I'll say 10 affirmations. They're either, about me or about the future that I'm calling in. And then I really just pay attention to my body. I make sure that I fuel it with the proper foods. I've gotten it really good as to what foods make me feel good and which foods make me feel bad. And so I practice self-love by feeding myself those foods that make me feel good. As my husband doesn't understand why I'm not eating cheese, but for me, it's like I'd rather my body feel good than taste the cheese. So I do that, and then I listen to my body. If I'm tired, I go to sleep at 8, and I don't mind falling asleep in my son's bed with him when we do our meditation at night and sleeping 9 hours, because if my body needed it, then that's what I'm going to give to it. And me and my husband, I include him in this because he's not one to make time for himself either. So on the weekends, I'll be like, hey, I'm going to go to the library and do a couple hours of work. On Sunday, do you want to go to the shooting range? And so it's like we allow each other space to kind of do stuff for ourselves, because it brings us joy. And then it takes the pressure off of like, well, I don't want to leave you with the kids, and we try to spend as much time as we can with each other as a family on the weekend. But we do still need to have our alone time doing the things that bring us joy. And going to the range and shooting his guns, that's his therapy. He was an Army Ranger, so he
Yeah.
likes that. So yeah, so that's how I like to show myself self-love.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because that's a big part. Like, I do this podcast as a way to connect with people and let other people share their life and experience, because I think that's how we grow and learn together. A bit like you said earlier about going to the therapist. Like, I'm not saying I disrespect therapists in any way. It's a disclaimer, and this is not therapist advice or anything like that, no medical advice. But I found that for a lot of people, it's the stories of people that have been through experiences that they can relate to that gives them more insight and a strength and an inspiration. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I truly appreciate you sharing and that. And the self-love tip with the mirror, that's funny because I put on my YouTube channel. That's what I was saying with my podcast, that's to connect with others. But on my YouTube channel, I share just my own personal development and my growth and my self-love journey. Like the major part of my journey was self-love practices, and something I didn't know I wasn't in love with myself. I didn't know I had an internal abusive relationship going on. Um, and I share a lot of that. And the mirror one's one that I share and teaching people like the technique. But that can be really powerful. And at first, when some people hear it, they think it's a joke.
Yes,
and
yeah.
and I was like, I said, if you look in the mirror and you look dead in your pupils and you just say, I love you, and then you measure how that feels. And I said, if you laugh at yourself, I said, that's also an indication that is showing you something. I said, it's all about, can you say it? And like you said, looking yourself in your pupils is really powerful. And but no, it's really nice to hear that's one of the sort of practices that you've done and tried. Do you
Mhm.
find, you're saying with your partner and his life, how has he shared with you sort of that transformation that he's noticed in you? Because you've been together now, I think you said 7 to 8 years,
Uh,
and in the last 2 years you had that big shift. What has he said anything about that, or has he recognized it?
yeah, like he tells me that he's proud of me, and he's very supportive. A lot of times he doesn't really understand why I do what I do and why I have these practices. But he supports me and he allows me the space to do it and tells me that he's proud of me, things like that. And it's really funny. He went to the dentist last week for the first time in, I think, 12 years. He just
Mm.
hasn't gone to the dentist. And he told me, "Oh, I'm going to the dentist." And he said something where I was like, are you making fun of me or what?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "You actually inspired me because you've been making all of these positive changes, and you've actually inspired me that maybe I should, you know, grow up and take care of myself too." Because he's older than me, so he's, I don't know, 37 or 38. I forget our ages all the time. And so he's like, you're inspiring me to make these changes and things like that. I'm like, "Oh, okay, yay,
Oh,
it's
nice.
working."
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that can be the best way sometimes, because we can try and force things on people and try and do something. But the example that we just set by being our authentic self and the change that we make within ourselves is the influence that we create to others in our environment. Like I did see the same with Danielle. When she does something, it motivates me. I'm like, oh, I don't need to be doing this. Or if I do something, I see that she suddenly does it without me having to say, oh, have you taken care of yourself, or pushing them to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And in the beginning, because we met and we kind of just fell in love so quickly, and we got pregnant within 6 months, and so then I was pregnant, and it was just kind of a crazy start to a relationship. And obviously, I still had a lot of healing to do back then, and so our relationship was kind of a little bit rocky. And I thought that it was him that needed all the fixing and all that. And I was so focused on that. And then once I realized, you know what, I need to focus on myself. And once I started taking better care of myself and my mental health and making those changes, our relationship got so much stronger. And I think it was just, a reflection of me and how I felt internally and projecting. And so once I just turned inward and started taking care of ourselves, our relationship really, really strengthened and got a lot better.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that definitely. Like, and I think so many people, I see it in other people where you can see which one of them's in a, say, not in a good place internally, and how they will be seeing that it's their opposite, it's their partner, like a mirror reflecting on, no, it's them doing it. They're the issue. Um,
Hmm.
what led you to that inspiration at that moment to do that course? Where did you find the course, and like how did that come even about in your life?
I'm not even sure at this point. I'm sure it was some sort of like Facebook advertising that kind of drew me in. And uh, the summer of 2020, I kind of got into manifesting. I read a book by Gabby Bernstein, The Universe Has Got Your Back. And I say that book just sparked my spiritual reawakening, because I kind of had renounced my Catholic upbringing when I was like 18 because of the situation that I was in. I kind of was like, what is this? Like, I went to Catholic school, the kids made fun of me, they were so mean, and now I'm in this abusive relationship. What is God? He doesn't exist, just because my life is just so awful.
Mm.
And so I was anti-religion for a long time, like 7 years. And so I read this book, and we were planning our big move to Texas, and using like one of the spiritual methods that Gabby suggested in her book, actually like manifested our dream home the next day. Like, we had been frantic trying to find a place. My husband was already leaving in a week to start his new job out here, and me and the kids were going to be home. And then, I did this little practice, and the next day we signed on a house. Like, we got
Oh,
the
nice.
the house deal and stuff. So I had been kind of exploring manifesting and going deeper into that. And, I was like manifesting random checks and getting all of these little signs from the universe and synchronicities, and things were just working out really well. And then that course popped up, and I was like, I want to go deeper. And it was like an 8-week course. I was like, this is perfect. This sounds intense and long. And I hopped right in, and yeah, and that kind of just sparked it all.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and it's fascinating what you're saying about sort of detaching from uh, the religion and faith, because I had the same issue. Like I was telling you, when I was 7, my life was very traumatic, and by the time I was like 8, 9, I'd spent years crying and praying, because I came from it was like a half Catholic, half Christian upbringing, from my remembrance, because my nan was from Ireland, so she brought like Catholic, but I think my dad was Christian, although he's from India, so it was even stranger. My Indian family are Christians.
Uh,
But Yeah, so I had been taken to church and these things, and I prayed, and for like some sort of savior or salvation, and it never came. So it just, in my view at that point, I was like, it doesn't exist. Then, I got into my teens, I was fascinated by people's belief systems and religions and how they could be so sure. And went in a path where I was just like, well, I'm so sure that you're all wrong, that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like I said, it's like now it's completely changed, but I don't belong to any religious system. I don't need religion to be of faith, and to see life in my own view of what it is. And like I said, and that the easiest way I can put it is the same intelligence that turns a bit of food into my flesh or into waste. Yeah, you can see in the external world, in the whole world, it's got a process and it's all happening. And to see that as there's something bigger than yourself, like I said, was a life-changing perception for me, especially after a couple of decades of thinking the opposite.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I'm not any religion either. I'm spiritual, and I know there's something bigger than us because every little piece of this world is just so magnificent and incredible. And there's more, you know?
Yeah. Where can people get a hold of you for your? Are you practicing as a coach now, or are you still in training?
Yes, yeah. So my business is launched, and I am taking clients. I am mostly on Instagram, so it's at Ashlee ASHLEE underscore Hoelck HOELCK. That's where I spend most of my time. I'm kind of on Facebook, but focusing on the Instagram and making reels now. So if you want to be entertained, go check those out.
Yeah, how have you found that sharing and putting yourself actually out there online? Like, because I've spoke to people with different areas, and I went through it myself by starting YouTube and podcast and Instagram and all them things, and putting yourself out there. Like I said, I didn't even want to be on a camera when I was younger at all, and now I'm talking about everything. How did you
Mhm.
find that process of your first step of, saying this is what I'm doing and putting it out? Was it an easy process, um, or was there
Yes.
difficulty at the beginning?
Yeah. So it definitely wasn't easy, and it was something that I did not want to do. But because I've been so deep in this work, and when the pandemic hit, I was working in a restaurant, so obviously the restaurant closed, and I said I'm never working in a restaurant again. And then we moved here, and so I've been just a stay-at-home mom, so I have a lot more space to work on myself. And one of my big things is push past the fear and you know do things that make you uncomfortable, because that's where the magic is. It's outside of your comfort zone. And so this last year, like, I've just been working on that so much and putting myself out there and doing these things that I don't necessarily want to do, but I know that they're necessary, and I know that something really beautiful can happen as a result of it. And so with that mentality, and with the mentality of I can only really fail if I give up, it just kind of pushes me forward. And I did a Facebook live, or it was an
Yeah.
Instagram live, and then we hopped on a Facebook live, and it was not so great. It was my very first time going live. And, I hopped on and I was kind of frazzled because I was having trouble getting my youngest down for his nap. And the first question she asked was like, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from. And I like basically started it with like, well, 33 years ago, I was born. And I just kind of spiraled. My face got bright red. I just had like massive anxiety and I was freaking out. And, she kind of drew me in because I was just scrambling. Um, but when we got off of the live, I laughed about it immediately. I was like, wow, I was like, that was not so great. I was definitely really nervous. And I don't know if I made any sense because it was kind of like I didn't even remember what I had said. And all I could think about while I was doing it was that I wanted it to be over and to get out. And, my heart was racing. And during it, I was trying to practice like breathing and calming myself down and trying to relax. And so after, immediately, I was able to laugh about it. Whereas a few years ago, I would have felt so embarrassed for God days and then probably never done it again.
Yeah.
But I immediately was like, that wasn't good, but I did it for the first time and it's only going to get better and get better. And I've been showing up on podcasts, I've been doing lives with other people, I've been doing lives on my own, I've been doing these reels and just being myself and being really authentic. And it's great and I love it and I'm glad that I'm doing it. And, you know, it's gonna be uncomfortable, but it's okay. Like I have this mentality that it's gonna be okay, You can always learn and grow from it, and it's in the past. You can't change it now, right? It's already happened.
Yeah, and like you said, if the sooner you can switch that to what did I learn, if it doesn't feel like it went the smoothest, it's like, what
Yeah.
can I learn? How can I make that a bit smoother next time? The big part for me during sort of that process and other processes was realizing the anxiety and the difference between excitement, because they can be very similar. Like your heart can race, you can get tingles, you can feel uncomfortable. But I rewired and said, you know what? I think that's actually excitement. I didn't know I
Yeah.
was excited.
Yeah.
That being a foreign feeling as well. And it's like, yeah. But no,
Yeah.
we're getting to the very end of the show, and I really appreciate your time. And I know you said you got your children around. Are they? You said, did you have to? Where are they right now?
They went to the pet store to pick up some food for our snakes.
You got snakes.
We have 3 snakes.
3 snakes. What
Yes.
made you choose snakes?
My husband loves snakes. He had snakes growing up. His dad's best friend is Steve the Snake Man. He bred snakes. So we got a snake. Well, we got a lizard for our youngest when he was around 4. And then we caught a snake. Well, the snake broke into the house when we were living in San Diego. And then we kept it for a little bit and then we let it go because it didn't seem like it was thriving. And so my son wanted another snake. And we ended up getting a ribbon snake. And I said, I don't want a snake that eats mice because they would feed the other snake. And it was like super traumatizing for me. And I had a little bit of postpartum anxiety at the time. So I was like, I don't need anything that's more triggering for my anxiety
Yeah.
right now. So we got a ribbon snake and it eats little feeder fish. And so we still have that snake. And then they went to a reptile show a few months back. And so the ribbon snake, you can't really hold it. It's very small and thin and fast. And every time like I take it out, it pees on me. And I'm like, I don't want to, I don't want to hold it if it's just going to pee on me. And so it's not very chill. So my husband decided to get my son a python, a ball python, because they're very nice. They're chill. They live a long time, and they kind of just hang out with you. And so they went to the reptile show, came home with a python, and they're like babies. They're only like a couple months old. And I was holding it, and then all day long, me and my 6-year-old, we were fighting over who got to hold the snake. And so
No.
my husband was like, do you need a snake? Do you need your own? And I was like, no, it's fine. And Carter was like, my son, he was like, can you just get your own so that you stop holding my snake? And so we went back to the reptile show the next day and we got a female. So the first one, my son named Joey. And, obviously the other snake, who's a girl, we had to name Phoebe. So we have Joey and Phoebe, are 2 ball pythons.
Okay, no. I had a royal python when I was like 15. I think I was. It got to like 5 foot, but yeah, it was really like you
Wow.
could hold it in your hands or put it around your neck.
Yeah.
Um, And then someone gave me an identical snake because they couldn't look after it. And I ended up with 2. And I ended up giving them to someone who was just better management with snakes, who could give it a better time, basically, because I was still young myself and I felt bad for it. But so it went to a nicer place. Someone who had, I don't know how many snakes, like 30 snakes or something crazy.
Wow.
But that's where it ended up. But yeah, it was really interesting experience to be in the presence of a snake. They actually I found really calming.
Yes. What's funny is that I feel like I'm meditating when I hold her. And like a lot of times I'll hold her at night and I just sit there and I hold her and I just like pet her with one finger because she's still pretty little. And it's very relaxing and very calming. And I just like take that as space to kind of just sit with my thoughts, because I don't do that a lot because I've got the kids and I'm running around and I'm always learning something new. So I've always got trainings that I'm doing, and I don't take a lot of time to just kind of sit with my thoughts and not on my computer or my phone. And so, yeah, holding her is like meditative for sure.
Yeah, and what I find fascinating with snakes is now that I'm older, weren't thinking about this when I had the snake when I was younger, but I've heard like yogis and different people, gurus talk about because we're say like the vibration and what your say frequency or intention set on, and they're saying like there's all these legends of these gurus and people that would go into the jungle and they would meditate for hours and hours, and all the snakes would come and sit around them because they sensed their vibration as calming, and they would come to sit there, which I always
Oh,
thought was
wow.
fascinating.
I'm
And they're
gonna
saying
try
something,
that.
and
Go in
that's
my
where the sort.
backyard and see if I can call the snakes to me.
Yeah, if you can get yourself relaxed enough and set off the right vibration, because they sense and feel in vibration. But apparently,
Oh,
that's stories that I
yeah,
heard that was fascinating. I
that's very.
have just a few short little questions I ask every guest at the end of the show to finish up. They're just fun, quick answer questions, nothing too much. Have you got time for them?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, first question: if you had to choose one, a cat or a dog?
Ooh, this is hard. I would say cat because right now we've got dogs and the puppy's been destroying everything. So I'm gonna go with cat right now.
Okay. What's your favorite color?
Sparkly pink.
Nice. And what excites you? What gives you energy and motivates you?
I would say really like helping other people, just my friends in general. Like if they ask me a question and I give them some advice and they actually, take it and implement it, and just watching them shift, that really excites me.
Oh, nice. And what does the opposite? What drains your energy? What turns you off?
Um, Trying to like put things together. Like if something is stuck or like any sort of like puzzle thing, not like an actual puzzle. Like yesterday I had to take off the car seat cover because my son threw up all over it, and trying to get that off of there was very frustrating. So figuring out those things.
Okay. And what sound or noise do you love?
Hmm. I would say like waterfalls.
Oh, nice.
I like
What
that.
sound or noise do you not love so much?
Um, Neighbors' dogs that yap a lot.
Yeah. What do you love about yourself?
I love that I'm always learning. I love that. I love that I'm always growing.
Nice. And what do you love to see in others?
Kindness.
Nice. And very last question: what do you love about animals? Now, this can be pets, or it can be animals in the wild.
Um, I I love that they're just natural. Like that's just how they are.
Nice. Yeah, just the authenticity of them as they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. It's been beautiful to hear your story, and I really truly appreciate you sharing and your openness and authenticity yourself. Like you've been very open, and it's beautiful when people are.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a beautiful. You've got the whole day ahead of you. I'm actually going to walk now. I've got a dog and 5 cats, and we all go for a walk together. So right now, I'm about to go and
You
take
take the
them for a
cats
walk.
for a walk?
Yep,
Oh my
they all
God, that's
follow,
so cool.
all off lead, and they all follow. I've got a mum and rescued a cat, and she gave birth to a load of kittens a month later. We thought we had rehomed them, and it's now 3 years later, and we have them all. So we've got a little family of cats. Her mum,
Oh,
her
that's
2 daughters, and
amazing.
her 2 sons, and yeah, and a
I
dog.
love it.
We're going to go for a little walk through the woods.
That's amazing. Well, you enjoyed that.
I will enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, say hello to your husband and your children for me. Have a beautiful day.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to the Selfish Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Greenheart, and I appreciate you being here. Don't forget to check out my YouTube channel. Just search Luke Greenheart on YouTube. You'll find me. Check out my website, lukegreenheart.com. Have an amazing day, and stay tuned for more episodes. I'll be interviewing guests on their path of self-development, their path to self, getting to know them in much more intimacy, much more depth, sharing and connecting with all so we can have a much more blissful, joyful, and productive life together. All right, much love. Have a great day.